A long overdue conversation about the 25th Amendment is finally taking place. I mean, don't get your hopes up. It's not going to happen, but a conversation is taking place for what it's worth. Scott McConnell, who is the co-founder of the American Conservative magazine, publicly called on JD Vance to announce his support for removing Donald Trump from office by invoking the 25th Amendment. And he also encouraged him to subsequently announce Democratic Senator Chris Murphy as his vice president, I guess in order to blunt some of the blowback against Republicans because of Donald Trump. Now, 2 days earlier, David Stockman, who served as Ronald Reagan's OMB director, also raised the specter of Vance using the 25th Amendment. And for those unfamiliar with what that would mean, Newsweek explains that the 25th Amendment would allow for the legal transfer of presidential power to the vice president if the president becomes incapacitated or unable to fulfill their duties, dies, resigns, or is removed from office by impeachment. And they explain that calls for the 25th Amendment to be invoked have increased since the Iran war started, with calls starting to creep into conservative circles as well as Democratic ones. Now, as unlikely as it is that JD Vance would even consider for a second doing this, it seems to have spooked Laura Loomer, a crazy person and ally to Donald Trump, who called it a coup attempt in a tweet, writing, "Tucker Carlson sits on the advisory board of the American Conservative. The magazine that Tucker Carlson sits on the board of is calling JD Vance to stage a coup against President Trump with false claims of insanity." Not so false. Just a reminder that Tucker Carlson's son works for JD Vance at the White House. Several months ago, American Conservative said that Vance should be the next president because he will lead a, quote, post-Israel America. Do you see what's going on here? Yeah, you're freaking out about a good time that is never going to come to fruition. Now, Tucker Carlson is obviously a red flag for MAGA loyalists because he's vocally opposed to Donald Trump's war with Iran. But even though most conservatives aren't willing to go as far as McConnell and Stockman, they do know that the current situation is politically untenable. JD Vance's Middle East advisor just stepped down, although, he says it's not because of Trump's war with Iran. Sure. And Nancy Mace called for Lindsey Graham to be removed from the Situation Room after he called on Donald Trump to try to seize Carg Island by putting boots on the ground. In other words, all of Trump's allies understand how bad things are, as dumb as they act, but they don't have the spines to call for Trump's removal with the 25th Amendment. So they're either Homer Simpsoning away into the bushes quietly, or they're scapegoating somebody else for Donald Trump's actions in order to oppose his actions without getting on his bad side. But if you think that Trump is incapable of making his own decisions, as Nancy Mace is suggesting, then you're kind of inadvertently legitimizing the case for his removal via the 25th Amendment. Nonetheless, as nice as it is to see more people talk about that, I don't think that the 25th Amendment is ever going to be invoked, which is a damn shame, because if it's not going to be used now, then it's never ever going to be used, because Donald Trump is indeed a madman who's driving the entire world into a state of chaos. And if we don't use a tool given to us to remove a madman like that, then you might as well get rid of it. We're never going to use it. Now, having said that, I think that the more savvy Trump allies know that they do still have to scurry away from all of his policies like the rats that they are, because the current situation really is unsustainable politically. Like, if they want to keep their careers, they have to find a way to make it seem like it's not as bad as it is, or try to save face somehow. Now, that's really hard to do. They can't just say fuck Donald Trump, but Trump's transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, is going on television and he's asking Americans to give the president grace because I guess he doesn't know what else to say. I wouldn't know what else to say, but here's his attempt to save face.
I think we have to offer the president grace. We know the president cares about the economy, gas prices for the American people. He's talked about that frequently and often. He also cares about peace.
Yes, very believable. The president who just started another war cares deeply about peace. But the hopelessness in his voice is almost palpable, because he knows that his association with Donald Trump is destroying his own presidential aspirations. And every single Republican, they have the same data that we all have, and they know that the writing is on the wall.
You cannot win an election when you are the incumbent party and the top issue is the cost of living, and you're the president of the United States and your net approval rating on it is 41 points underwater. I mean, you're with Greg Louganis at this point, and with independents 60 points underwater. What, are you kidding me? You cannot win. If you're the president and you're the Republican Party and you're not addressing this issue, wave adios amigos, goodbye, see you later, your House majority, and may very well be your Senate majority as well.
Yeah, I mean, with grocery prices going up and gas hitting around $5 a gallon and $6 for diesel, which is fucking crazy, Republicans know that they're going to get wiped out in November if the election is free and fair, which is why they're pushing to make it not free and fair and pushing so hard for the save Save Act, which would disenfranchise millions of eligible voters. So I'm assuming that we're probably going to see a lot of them do some political and mental gymnastics so that way they can run away from Donald Trump just enough to not offend him. It's a delicate dance. Not all of them will be able to do it or will be savvy enough to even try. But to them, like for their careers, I think that it's going to be preferable to do that dance as opposed to the alternative where they just go scorched earth and call for his removal via the 25th Amendment, because they will be the immediate enemy of the base, which isn't just going to be a career ender, but they're going to receive lots of death threats, which they just don't want to put up with. You know, maybe later on they'll be vindicated, but in the short term, it's just not worth it to them. But it really is a damn shame that there's almost no chance that the 25th Amendment will be used to remove Donald Trump when the entire fucking point of this is to get rid of presidents just like him. I mean, look, the political gambling sites like Polymarket and Kalshi, which should be illegal, by the way, they're allowing people to bet on the 25th Amendment being used, which, I mean, maybe that gives you some hope that there's some insider in the Trump regime who might make millions off of it if they try to get him to be kicked out after betting on it. I don't know. But I mean, I just don't think that the people that Trump chose to surround himself with are going to go that far. In fact, I think it's wishful thinking and a little bit naive. So the world's just going to be held hostage by this unhinged maniac who's living in an alternate reality and who makes the case for his own removal stronger every single time he opens his goddamn mouth. I say this because on Sunday he tweeted, "Now with the death of Iran, the greatest enemy America has is the radical left, highly incompetent Democratic Party." So he is basically declaring victory over a country he invaded that is beating him currently, and claimed that his political opponents are as big of a threat to him as the country that he's doing war crimes in. Which implies what? It implies that violence against Democrats is justified, seeing as how they are America's new greatest enemy since he defeated the last one by murdering them. This would be an impeachment-worthy scandal if any other president said something like this. But since we get a new scandal from Trump every single day that's worse than Watergate, it's not even a fucking blip on the radar. But on top of that, he is repeatedly going out of his way to sow chaos throughout the country as well as the world whenever he can. He had his own personal Gestapo invade and occupy U.S. cities earlier this year, and also that hasn't ended, but like he did a whole operation as if it was a war in Minneapolis, and now he sent the ICE Gestapo to airports to fill in for unpaid TSA workers after Linda from Arizona called into a podcast of a Fox News host and floated the idea, which was then parroted on air by said Fox News host whose podcast she said that on. And now Americans get to have armed Nazis standing around, mean mugging them for hours because Donald Trump decided that Linda from Arizona had a good point. And not to mention, it's also because he rejected a bipartisan proposal to fund TSA to end the shutdown because he wants to use that as leverage against Democrats for ICE funding. And keep in mind that the day before he officially sent the ICE Gestapo to airports across the country, they violently kidnapped a mother who was traveling with her daughter in front of everybody. They just didn't care. But I'm sure that the thousands of people in lines at airports across the country feel so much better now that Trump's Gestapo is breathing down their necks. Great job. Thanks, Trump. But I mean, what we're experiencing is nothing compared to the pain and suffering that this madman is causing for people around the world who didn't even get a chance to vote against him. He is currently pursuing regime change through starvation in Cuba with an illegal oil blockade that is definitionally collective punishment. And it's resulted in multiple blackouts, food shortages, and crippled hospitals, with Cuba's deputy foreign minister telling NBC that nearly 100,000 Cubans, including 11,000 children, cannot get the surgeries that they need as a result of a lack of fuel and energy. But his belief is that collective punishment is his ticket to regime change, not just in Cuba, but around the world. He's presumably pursuing the same strategy right now in Iran, which further demonstrates his madness and why somebody this unhinged should be nowhere near power, hence why we need to use the 25th Amendment, even though we won't. But I want to talk about Iran because, in case you missed it, Trump issued an ultimatum on Iran on Saturday, warning that if they don't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, he's going to take out their power plants, starting with the biggest one first. And even though it feels pointless to say this, I do still want to stress that this is collective punishment, which is illegal under international law. It is a war crime to punish civilians for a government. So he's threatening more war crimes in Iran after he just bombed a school. And not to mention, as Climate Action Network International points out, he's also committing ecocide with his partner in crime Netanyahu by bombing fuel depots, which poisoned Tehran's environment for a generation. Nonetheless, his new threat horrified people in Iran who had to hope and pray that our psychotic president wasn't going to subject them to starvation. The New York Times spoke to some Iranians who explained just how catastrophic something like that would be. Quote, "As a doctor, I warned the organizers of the imposed war against Iran that attacking the infrastructure of my country, including water and electricity, means the indirect killing of thousands of innocent people lying on Iranian hospital beds," said Hossein Kermanpour, the spokesman for Iran's Ministry of Health. Ruhollah, a 35-year-old Tehran resident, said in a text message that his family was watching the news closely and hoping that Iranian officials' threats of retaliation would prompt Arab countries to pressure Mr. Trump to back off. Quote, "As far as I can tell, everyone is extremely worried," said Ruhollah, who asked that his name not be published out of fear of retribution. "We are sitting and waiting to see what will happen to us in 48 hours. Everyone will suffer. We will lose power. The Arabs will lose power and water." And Trump's threat was so beyond the pale that even proponents of regime change among the Iranian diaspora who support Trump's war with Iran urged him to not do that because it would obviously hurt the Iranian people. So basically, an entire country had to be on edge because of a maniac in a country on the other side of the world that was elected by a population of dumbasses that thought that he would bring down prices. It's infuriating. But thankfully, Trump did back down when the 48-hour deadline was up. And while I'm glad that he didn't do the unthinkable yet, his reason just further demonstrates why he is unfit to lead. In an all-caps tweet on Truth Social on Monday, he announced that he'd be postponing strikes against Iranian power plants after having, quote, "very good and productive conversations with an unnamed Iranian diplomat." Now, a reporter for the Jerusalem Post claimed that it was Iran's parliamentary speaker, MB Ghalibaf, but on Twitter, he's claiming that that's fake news that was intended to manipulate oil markets, which isn't that big of a stretch and wouldn't be the first time that Trump has done something like that. So it's possible that he made that up. But it's also possible that Ghalibaf is lying to save his own ass, since Israel has allegedly murdered American-approved Iranian successors that Donald Trump was trying to work with in order to keep Trump fully entrenched in the war. We don't know. And even Trump hinted that he didn't want to reveal who he's working with because they might get killed by, some entity in the region that may or may not be working with him.
Mr. President, again, Mr. President, I know you've deployed this. I don't want him to be killed.
By Israel, right? So it seems to be a tacit admission, at least to me, I could be reading that wrong, that his war crime partners in Israel are deliberately trying to stop him from finding an off-ramp. But that is, if we're even to believe that he's genuinely interested in that, because again, this could be an attempt to temporarily ease the markets, because all weekend he's been escalating and escalating and escalating, so why should we ever believe him when he says he wants peace? CBS News reported that they are still preparing for a ground invasion, so it's hard to believe that this fucking psychopath is interested in peace after he chose to bomb them in the first place, regardless if Israel goaded him into that war or not. With that being said, when he is ready to bail on the war that he started, it is clear that Israel is going to do everything in their power to keep him engaged and entrenched in that war, because now that Trump has tried to cool tensions, guess what? Israel is launching new strikes on Tehran. And as Joe Kent, the white nationalist who resigned from Trump's regime, put it, actual de-escalation necessitates that Trump restrain Israel because they're very clearly trying to undermine Trump's attempts to de-escalate. Again, assuming he actually wants to do that. But I mean, when he finally does cry uncle, he's not going to be able to reign in Israel for a number of reasons that I can only speculate about. One, because he doesn't have the mental capacity to be a leader or the balls to do what he needs to do to get them to stop, even though they're a vassal state. Or two, because he's hopelessly corrupt and was paid by Israel to let them do what they want. Or three, because Israel has some sort of blackmail on him regarding the Epstein files. Like, it could be all of the above, but regardless, it speaks to his inability to govern and is all the more reason why he simply has to be removed by the 25th Amendment, because it doesn't matter if it's incompetence or corruption. He is a danger to the entire world. And if you can't get a foreign country that's supposed to be a vassal state under control, you very clearly aren't capable of leading. But I mean, this is why you don't let people this fucking unhinged have power. Like, his idiocy is quite literally a matter of national security and a threat to international peace and stability, and it is being exploited right now by terrorists who are taking advantage of America in this weakened state because of Donald Trump. And to be clear, when I say terrorists, I mean the Israeli settlers who are committing acts of terror on Palestinians in the West Bank on a daily basis because they know that weak American leadership isn't going to do shit about it. And it's why Israel is deploying its Gaza model in Lebanon in an effort to conquer it. Their ethnic cleansing in southern Lebanon has already displaced more than 1 million people, with many of them sleeping on the streets in Beirut, which brings the total number of people that they've displaced to 6 million when you include 3 million in Iran and 2 million in Gaza. And they're also bombing medical facilities in Lebanon just like they did in Iran and Gaza because they know that our 79-year-old dementia patient president is not going to even consider punishing them. Because, I mean, why would he punish them when he's materially supporting them and committing crimes against humanity with them simultaneously? And also, he's doing them himself in the Caribbean, so it's not like he's going to have a moral compass suddenly and think, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat people this way. So to go back to the question of the 25th Amendment, should it be used? Yes, absolutely it should be used, as unrealistic as it is, because it is literally a matter of life and death for millions of people. But that would require some of his biggest sycophants to go against him. And I hate to break it to you all, but we all know that's not going to happen, right? Like, do you think that these motherfuckers are going to oust Donald Trump themselves when they talk about him like this?
What President Trump has done on border security and public safety is a national miracle that will be studied not only for generations, but for centuries to come. Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you, Steve. So, Cash, see if you can top that. I don't know. That's a tough one, Cash.
That is tough. You know, Mr. President, as I look around this venue, I see, and I'm reminded again, why we have the greatest warriors on God's green earth, the men and women serving in uniform, the men and women serving and wearing the badge, and law enforcement, our police, our sheriffs around the state of Tennessee. I'm reminded that Americans exist to protect this country day in and day out, and they've done it like we've done it here. But what we didn't have was you. We didn't have a commander-in-chief who backed the blue, who resourced the blue, who funded the military, who did whatever it takes to safeguard every single life. And here in Memphis, Tennessee, you have put on a show for the world.
I have to say, as a homosexual, even I'm shocked by their dick-sucking skills. They may be straight, but they're the ultimate throat goats. They simply can't be topped. No pun intended, because they could be topped if Trump wanted to top them. But my point is that they will never, ever, ever go against Daddy Trump, even if they see what we all see, which they do, which means that the 25th Amendment is never going to be used by these people. Do you think JD Vance is going to use the 25th? No. Which leaves us with two other improbable options. One, a general strike to pressure him to resign, which there was momentum for just a couple of months ago. Or two, Democrats impeaching and removing him from office if they take back Congress. Both of those options, in my opinion, are highly unlikely, but I think that we're more likely to see pigs fly before we see an opportunist like JD Vance lead the charge to remove Donald Trump from the 25th Amendment. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't push for him to do that, but it's just not something that we should get our hopes up about, you know, as reasonable as it would be for JD Vance to do that, given how incapable Donald Trump is of leading. So in conclusion, I guess that the entire world is going to be forced to live in fear for the foreseeable future because Americans decided to elect a complete fucking dipshit because they thought that said dipshit would make the cost of eggs like 25 cents cheaper or something. I don't know. Like, they should never, ever be forgiven for what they've unleashed on the entire fucking world, because this is a nightmare, and the fact that we have to live with this madman with the most power is just, I can't think about it, because if I do, I start to doom and catastrophize, and it's just not, I want to put it out of my head, because this man has the big red button right in front of him, and he can press it the second he wants to, and I just find that really really horrifying. I mean, if he wants to nuke a fucking hurricane or something, who's to stop him? They'll all suck his cock and tell him it's the best idea ever. So it's truly horrifying times, and you already knew that. So I guess I'm just here to validate the opinions that you already had, because I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I mean, just don't get your hopes about the 25th. We should talk about it and push for it, but it's not going to fucking happen, as much as I would love to see that.